My mother-in-law gave my 15-year-old daughter a dollar store puzzle book meant for toddlers, while her sister's kids unwrapped iPads. My name is Caitlin Sullivan. I'm 43. And I'd spent over a decade watching this woman favor my sister-in-law Aubrey's 3 children over my 2 kids like it was an Olympic sport. Christmas dinner. The cousins, ages 12, 10, and 8, squealed over their new tablets, swiping and scrolling with that particular smugness that comes from knowing you're the chosen ones. Emma, my 15-year-old, held a puzzle book with cartoon farm animals and the words ages 2 to 4 printed on the cover. Beside her, Gabriel, my 13-year-old son, clutched an identical book featuring alphabet blocks. Emma's jaw tightened. Her eyes went bright with tears she refused to shed. Not in front of them. Never in front of them. I watched my daughter fight to keep her face neutral while the cousins scrolled past her like she didn't exist, and I felt something crack inside my chest. My mother-in-law Evelyn, 68 years old and on her 3rd glass of wine before dinner was even served, refilled her glass with slightly unsteady hands. The Pinot Grigio sloshed over the rim. She didn't notice. Or didn't care. "Mom," my husband Blake said quietly. Just that one word. "They're growing up so fast," Evelyn said, watching Aubrey's kids with a smile that never quite reached us. "They deserve nice things." Emma set the puzzle book on the coffee table with careful precision. Then she stood and walked toward the bathroom. Her shoulders were rigid, her footsteps too measured. I knew that walk. That was the walk of someone holding themselves together with wire and willpower. Gabriel looked at his own puzzle book, then at his cousin's iPads. His face showed nothing. He'd learned early that showing hurt only made it worse. I stood. "I need to talk to you," I said to Evelyn. "In the kitchen." She followed me with that wine glass in hand, her movements slightly off balance. I closed the kitchen door. iPads versus puzzle books for toddlers? Really? Aubrey's children are more appreciative. Evelyn took another sip. They actually use their gifts. Your kids never seem excited anyway. They're teenagers receiving toddler toys, Evelyn. How excited should they be? It's the thought that counts. The thought. I stared at this woman who'd spent a decade and a half perfecting the art of making my children feel worthless. What thought exactly? She set her glass down with too much force. Wine splashed onto the counter. They don't need expensive things. They're practical children. Practical? Your children remind me of myself at that age, she said. Her voice turned cold, clinical, ordinary, unremarkable. Expensive gifts would be wasted on children like that. She said it like she was explaining why you don't put premium gas in a Honda Civic. Simple resource allocation, reasonable decision-making. You're telling me my children aren't worth investing in. I'm telling you I know how to allocate limited resources. She picked up her wine glass. Some children have potential, some don't. It's not cruel, it's practical. Practical. Not ignorance, not oversight. Deliberate cruelty wrapped in justification. And she truly believed it. I could see it in her eyes. She thought she was being sensible, logical, making tough but necessary decisions about where to invest her money and attention. She genuinely couldn't see what she was doing. "We're leaving," I said. "Don't be dramatic." I walked out of that kitchen, found Blake in the living room, his face carefully neutral in that way he'd perfected over a lifetime of managing his mother. "We're going. Caitlin. Now." The 2-hour drive home was silent. Blake stared out the window with his face turned away, doing that thing he'd learned as a child when his mother's behavior had no acceptable response. Shut down, retreat, survive. In the back seat, Emma sat with her face toward the window. Gabriel scrolled through his phone. Neither of them spoke. When we got home, Emma went straight to her room. No goodnight, no conversation. Just that same measured walk from the living room, like if she moved too quickly, she'd shatter. I wanted to follow her immediately, give her space. I stood in the hallway outside her door for 10 minutes before I knocked. "Come in." She was lying on her bed staring at the ceiling, still fully dressed, her hands folded across her stomach. "You okay?" Maybe Grandma's right. Her voice was quiet, flat. Maybe we're just ordinary, and that's why she doesn't care about us the way she cares about the cousins. Everything stopped. My 15-year-old daughter had just internalized the exact poison her grandmother had been feeding her for years. And I'd let it happen. I'd watched it happen. I'd funded it happening. "Emma, it makes sense," she continued, still staring at the ceiling. "If we were special, she'd treat us like them. But we're not. So she doesn't. That's not... It's okay, Mom. Some people are just more important than others." She said it like she was stating a fact. The sky's blue, water is wet. Some children matter less. I sat on the edge of her bed. "Your grandmother is wrong." "She seems pretty sure." She's cruel. Or she's honest. Emma finally looked at me. At least the cousins know where they stand. We keep showing up hoping it'll be different, but it never is. So maybe we should just accept it. I'd spent 15 years accepting this treatment. 15 years teaching my children that family belonging was worth any price, that you kept showing up even when it hurt, that you swallowed the humiliation because family mattered. I'd taught her this. That night, after Emma fell asleep, I pulled bank statements, receipts, transaction histories, everything I'd been deliberately avoiding for a decade and a half. At work, I was known for keeping meticulous records of every project expenditure. I'd once caught a $12,000 budget error that saved my department from investigation. I mentored junior employees through difficult professional situations with documented evidence and strategic thinking. But with my family, I'd written checks and looked away. 3 emergency repairs, 1 at $7,800, 2 more at $5,000 and $3,000 each, 6 years of hosting major holidays at $4,000 to $5,000 per year, countless gifts, regular financial help Evelyn requested and never repaid, over $40,000. I'd spent over $40,000 funding my own children's humiliation. Blake walked in around midnight, found me at the kitchen table surrounded by paperwork. "What are you doing?" "Calculating what it costs to teach our daughter she's worthless." He rubbed his face. "That's not fair, isn't it?" I pushed a statement toward him. "Your mother's emergency roof repair, $7,800, holiday hosting for 6 years, $25,000 minimum, every birthday gift for her, every Mother's Day, every crisis she manufactured, over $40,000 total. My mother has issues. Your mother told our daughter she's ordinary and unremarkable and not worth investing in. She said it to her face, Blake, and we've been paying her to do it." He sat down, looked at the numbers. I watched his face as he processed what I'd finally forced myself to see. "What do you want to do?" "I want to never fund this again." My voice was steady, cold. "I want to never participate in our family's humiliation again?" That's cutting her off completely. "Yes, Caitlin." She looked our daughter in the eye and called her worthless. In nicer words, maybe, but that's what she meant. And I'm done. Blake didn't argue, but he didn't agree either. He just sat there, caught between his mother and his family, doing that shutdown thing he'd learned as a child. I stared at those bank statements. $35,000. 15 years of half-hearted attendance where I'd protected myself by emotionally checking out while forcing my children to stay present for their own destruction. I'd arrived late to gatherings, left early, stayed on my phone during holiday meals, declined to participate in traditions. I'd created the exact opening Evelyn needed. The cold daughter-in-law who never seemed comfortable at family events, who never really tried. What I didn't know then was that my years of self-protection had given her ammunition I couldn't see coming. That she'd been building a case against me while I was building walls around myself. But I knew this. I would never write another check for my children's humiliation, even if I had to fight alone. The morning after Christmas, I called her. "You're not welcome at events involving the children anymore." Silence on the other end. Then, "You can't be serious." "I am. Blake won't allow this. Blake doesn't get a vote on this one." My voice was steady, cold. "You looked our daughter in the eye and told her she wasn't worth investing in. That ends now." She hung up. Blake found me in the kitchen 20 minutes later. "We should talk about how to handle this." "There's nothing to talk about. She's my mother, Caitlin. We can't just cut her off completely. Maybe supervised visits or—" "No. You're being too harsh." I stared at the man I'd been married to for 15 years. The man who'd sat silent during that 2-hour drive home while our daughter internalized poison. "Your mother called Emma ordinary and unremarkable, to her face, and you think I'm being too harsh?" She was drunk. She didn't mean, she meant every word, and I'm done funding it. He looked away. That shutdown thing he'd perfected as a child. Survival mode activated. The family response was immediate and coordinated. 48 hours after my call, I'd received messages from an aunt, 2 uncles, and 4 cousins, all variations of the same script. Respect your elders, maintain family unity, forgive and move forward. Some wounds heal with time. The aunt sent a 3-paragraph text about how Evelyn was from a different generation and didn't understand modern parenting. One uncle called me dramatic. The other suggested I was overreacting to gift-giving preferences. Evelyn had been busy. Then came the social media post. A long caption about ungrateful daughters-in-law who poison children against their grandmothers. How she tried so hard to love all her grandchildren equally. How some people use children as weapons when they don't get their way. 200 sympathetic comments. most from people who'd never met my children. The post didn't mention the iPads versus puzzle books, didn't mention calling Emma ordinary, just painted me as the villain who was destroying a grandmother's heart. I wanted to screenshot it, respond with receipts and bank statements and the truth. But I knew how this worked. Defending yourself against a narcissist's public narrative just gives them more ammunition. More proof that you're unstable, aggressive, the problem. So I saved the post and said nothing. Aubrey called 3 days later. Mom's really upset. She says this is all a misunderstanding about gift budgets. It's not about budgets. She says you've always seemed uncomfortable at family events, that you arrive late and leave early and never really engage. Aubrey's voice was careful, mediating. Maybe if you tried harder to. Your mother told my daughter she wasn't worth expensive gifts because she's ordinary. Mom says she doesn't remember saying that. She'd had too much wine. Being drunk doesn't create cruelty, Aubrey. It just reveals it. After I hung up, Blake's words echoed. You always seemed uncomfortable at family events. It was true. I'd been unconsciously protecting myself from Evelyn's subtle digs for years. Arriving late, leaving early, staying on my phone during gatherings, declining to participate in family traditions, emotionally checking out while physically present. I'd created the exact opening she needed. The cold daughter-in-law who never seemed to try, who never really belonged, who was clearly the problem. But I'd never protected my children by leaving entirely. I'd kept showing up while mentally absent, forcing them to be present for their own humiliation while I retreated into my phone. That realization hit harder than Evelyn's cruelty. I pulled the bank statements again. Found the roof repair invoice from last year, $7,800 for emergency repairs. I called the contractor whose number was on the paperwork. Sullivan Residence, he said. Yeah, I remember that job. Replaced some damaged shingles after that windstorm. How extensive was the damage? Pretty minor, maybe a dozen shingles. Took my guys about 4 hours. And the total cost? Let me check. Papers rustled. $800. $800. Not $7,800. $800. She'd added a zero. Pocketed $7,000 while I believed I was helping with a genuine emergency. This wasn't the first time. The $3,000 for the furnace that only needed a $200 part. The $5,000 for the fence that cost $1,200 to repair. I'd been too busy protecting myself emotionally to look at the numbers. When I called Evelyn about the roof repair, her speech was slightly slurred. I don't know what you're talking about. The contractor confirmed the work cost $800. You billed me for $7,800. You're mistaken. I have his invoice, and yours. She hung up. 2 hours later, Aubrey called again. Mom's experiencing chest pains. The doctor says stress can cause real health problems. Maybe you should... No. She's not well, Caitlin. This estrangement is making her sick. The manipulation was so practiced it was almost beautiful. Evelyn couldn't control me directly anymore, so she'd create a medical crisis, make me the villain who put her in the hospital, force me to back down to save her life. Your mother stole $7,000 from me last year. That's fraud, Aubrey, not stress. I hung up before she could respond. Blake came home that night and found me in the kitchen with more bank statements spread across the table. My mother called. She says you accused her of stealing. She did steal. $7,000 from the roof repair, probably more from the other emergencies. You're really going to pursue this? She's having chest pains. Convenient timing. Caitlin. His voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. We're being too harsh. She made mistakes, but she's still my mother. We should. Your mother systematically humiliated our children for 15 years while I paid her to do it. That's not a mistake, Blake. That's a choice. He slept in the guest room that night. The marriage became tense, careful. Two people living in the same house fighting the same war from opposite sides. At work the next day, I was reviewing project timelines when Maya knocked on my door. She was a junior analyst I'd been mentoring through a difficult relationship with her own mother. Do you have time for coffee this week? She asked. You seem distracted lately. I thought maybe I could listen for once. The role reversal caught me off guard. I'm fine. You've spent 3 months helping me set boundaries with my family. You look like you could use someone to return the favor. We met at the cafe near the office 2 days later. I didn't plan to talk about Evelyn, but Maya asked direct questions and I found myself answering. Your mother-in-law sounds like my mother, she said. The same tactics, creating crises, recruiting family members, making you the villain. How did you handle it? I used everything you taught me. Documentation, boundaries, refusing to engage with the manipulation. She smiled. It's working. For the first time in my life, it's actually working. Meeting with her felt good, a reminder that I was competent, that I could see clearly and help others find their way through exactly the chaos I was drowning in. The irony wasn't lost on me. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with 15 years of bank statements arranged by date. $35,000. $7,000 of that was provable fraud from the roof repair alone, plus whatever else I hadn't discovered yet. I'd spent 15 years making the same mistake, showing up to be hurt, teaching my children that family belonging was worth any price, that you endured humiliation because that's what family meant, and now I was fighting back while my own husband wasn't fully on my side. Blake had learned to survive his mother's behavior by shutting down, by making himself small, by never pushing back hard enough to trigger her wrath. I'd learned from my own mother's failed attempts to win acceptance that you kept trying, kept showing up, kept hoping. We'd both been trained by our families to accept cruelty as normal, and we'd passed that training to our children in different ways. The difference now was this: I could see it, I could name it, I could document it with devastating clarity. I wanted my children to learn a different lesson. That protection matters more than belonging, that some relationships cost more than they're worth, that walking away from people who hurt you isn't cruelty, it's survival, even if I had to teach them alone. 6 weeks of maintaining the boundary. 6 weeks of silence from Evelyn, except for the coordinated family texts I'd stopped reading. 6 weeks where Emma seemed lighter, where Gabriel stopped, checking his phone nervously during dinner. 6 weeks where I almost believed we'd found peace. Then I discovered the texts. I was looking for Emma's charger in the kitchen when Gabriel's phone lit up on the counter. A message from a number I didn't recognize. Please come see Grandma. She misses you so much. Your mother is having some kind of breakdown, but you can visit without permission. I love you. I picked up his phone. Scrolled. 43 messages over 2 weeks. All variations of the same script. Your mother is sick. Your mother is keeping us apart. I love you and miss you. Come see me without telling her. My hands shook as I read Gabriel's only response, sent 4 days ago. I have basketball Tuesday and Thursday at 6 p.m. and Saturday at 2 p.m. Home games at Lincoln Middle. He'd given her his schedule, not because he was defiant or sneaking around, because his 13-year-old brain still hoped his grandmother might actually show up for him. Evelyn had been secretly texting both my children, telling them I was having a breakdown, recruiting them against me while I thought I'd established protection. This wasn't desperation. This was tactical warfare using my kids as soldiers. I blocked the number immediately. Then I sat Gabriel down and showed him the messages. She's lying, I said. I'm not having a breakdown. And you don't visit anyone without permission. His face went carefully neutral, that shutdown thing he'd learned. I wasn't going to. But you gave her your schedule. I thought... He looked away. I thought maybe she'd actually come watch a game. Just once. The wound was deeper than I'd realized. Even after everything, he still hoped. 3 days later, I was in the bleachers at Lincoln Middle watching Gabriel play basketball when I saw her. Evelyn walked through the gym entrance with her hair disheveled and her movements unsteady. Not the careful unsteadiness of age. The loose, wandering instability of someone who'd been drinking. She was making her way toward the court, calling Gabriel's name. Gabriel saw her. Missed a pass that hit him square in the chest. His face went confused, then mortified. Gabriel... Evelyn's voice carried across the gym. Baby, I miss you so much. Your mother won't let me see you. Every parent in the bleachers turned to watch. She kept walking, crying. Loud, performative sobs designed to create maximum spectacle. I just want to see my grandson. They're keeping me from him. I stood, started toward her, but school security was already moving. 2 officers intercepted her before she reached the court, their hands gentle but firm on her arms. Ma'am, you need to leave. He's my grandson. She tried to pull away. I have rights. Multiple parents had their phones out, recording. The footage would be all over social media within hours, and Evelyn would make sure of it. Security escorted her out while she cried and called Gabriel's name. My son stood frozen on the court, his face bright red, surrounded by teammates who didn't know where to look. The coach called a timeout. Gabriel walked off the court and straight to the locker room. Didn't look at me. Didn't look at anyone. I wanted to follow him. Wanted to shield him from the stares and whispers, but he'd just been publicly humiliated by his grandmother while I sat in the bleachers unable to stop it. That night, the post appeared. Footage someone had shared with Evelyn, probably that cousin who kept messaging about family unity. The video showed security escorting her out while she cried. The caption was a masterpiece of manipulation. Cruel mothers who turned children into weapons. I tried to see my grandson and was thrown out like a criminal. Some people use their children to punish family members they don't like, praying for healing. 200 sympathetic comments within an hour. Strangers calling me terrible. Family members I'd never met sharing the post with outraged commentary. The video didn't show her unsteady walk, didn't show her disrupting a children's basketball game, just showed a crying grandmother being removed. Evelyn was very good at this. Blake found me at the kitchen table staring at the post. My mother is clearly escalating out of desperation. Maybe we should consider supervised visits. No. She's getting worse, Caitlin. If we give her something, you want to reward her for showing up drunk at our son's basketball game? She wasn't drunk. I turned my laptop toward him. Watch the security footage the school sent me. Watch her walk. Listen to her speech. He watched. His face tightened. We can't give her access, I said. Not supervised. Not anyway. She's using our children as weapons against me. She's spiraling. Yes. And if we let her near the kids while she's spiraling, they're the ones who get hurt. The argument lasted 2 hours. Blake kept circling back to the same point. His mother needed help and cutting her off wasn't helping. I kept stating the same fact. Protecting our children mattered more than rescuing his mother. He slept in the guest room that night. The next morning, Emma found me making coffee. I'm glad you blocked her number. I looked at my daughter. You are? Yeah. I thought I'd feel guilty, but I just feel... She searched for the word. Relieved. Is that bad? No, sweetheart, that's not bad. She sat at the counter, picked at the edge of a placemat. Can I ask you something? Always. Why did we keep going to family events for all these years if Grandma was always mean? Her voice was quiet, direct. Why did you make us keep trying for someone who clearly didn't want us? The question hit like a physical blow. I'd spent 15 years telling myself we were teaching them about family, about persistence, about not giving up on people you love. But standing in my kitchen listening to my 15-year-old's simple logic, I had no answer that made sense. Why had I kept taking them to be hurt? Why had I forced them to chase acceptance from someone who would never give it? I thought family was supposed to be worth the effort. But she wasn't making effort, Emma said. We were, and she just kept being mean. So why did we keep going back? I had no good answer, nothing that could withstand her logic, nothing that explained why I'd protected myself by checking out while forcing them to stay present for their own destruction. I made a mistake, I said finally. I should have stopped taking you years ago. Emma nodded. Then she got up and hugged me, and I realized my daughter was giving me permission to stop failing her. That night, I called my own mother. Mom, I need to ask you about Grandma. Silence on the other end. Then, what about her? Did she favor Uncle Tim's kids over us? More silence, longer this time. Why are you asking this now? Because I need to know if I'm crazy or if I remember it right. My mother sighed. Yes, she favored them. Openly. I spent years trying to win equal treatment. I never succeeded. There it was. The pattern I'd been too blind to see. Why didn't you stop taking us? Because she was my mother. Her voice was quiet, resigned. Because I kept thinking if I just tried harder, if we just showed up enough times, she'd see us. Really see us. She never did. I'd absorbed that same wound. That same belief that family acceptance was worth chasing, that you kept showing up to be hurt because that's what family meant. But I'd passed it on differently. I hadn't chased acceptance myself. I'd forced my children to chase it while I protected myself by disconnecting. I'm sorry, my mother said. I should have stopped. I should have protected you instead of making you chase someone who didn't want to be caught. I did the same thing to my kids. I know. She paused. Maybe we can both stop now. At work the next day, Maya knocked on my door. Coffee this week? I almost said no. I was too raw, too exhausted. But she'd asked, and I'd been meeting with her for months, and saying no felt like breaking something. We met Thursday at the usual cafe. Maya ordered for both of us, got my drink right, and sat down with that direct look she'd learned from watching me navigate her own family crisis. You look terrible, she said. What happened? I told her. The texts, the basketball game, my daughter's question, my mother's admission. Maya listened. Then she said, You gave me permission to protect myself from my family. It was the first time anyone had told me that was okay. That I wasn't being cruel or selfish. Just protecting myself. That's different. It's not. She leaned forward. You could see my situation clearly because you weren't in it. But you were giving me advice you couldn't give yourself. And now you are. That's not failure. That's growth. The next day, another junior employee asked if she could join our next coffee meeting. Maya mentioned you've been helping her with family stuff. I'm dealing with my grandparents favoring my brother, and I don't know how to handle it. Another one the week after, then two more. They all had variations of the same story. Family favoritism, manipulation tactics, boundary violations. They all sounded familiar. I could see clearly for others what I'd been blind to in myself. That's when the idea crystallized. Not just informal coffee meetings. A structured program. Resources. Documentation templates. Support for people navigating difficult family relationships. I started researching that night. Family systems theory. Narcissistic personality patterns. Boundary setting frameworks. Generational trauma transmission. I found articles about how emotional wounds pass through families. How children absorb their parents' coping mechanisms without recognizing them as wounds. How 3 generations can perpetuate the same damage through completely different behaviors. Evelyn was inflicting a wound she'd received. My mother had chased acceptance that never came, and I'd forced my children to do the same while protecting myself differently. 3 generations. Same wound, different methods. The only way to break the cycle completely was to stop chasing family acceptance and build something new. Not for Evelyn. Not even for Blake. For the people like Maya who needed permission to protect themselves. For my children who deserve to learn that walking away from people who hurt you isn't cruelty. For myself. Because seeing clearly isn't enough if you don't act on what you see. I pulled up a blank document and started outlining a mentorship program focused on navigating difficult family relationships, boundary setting, evidence documentation, recognizing manipulation patterns. Everything I'd learned by failing my own children could help someone else's kids survive intact. That's not redemption, but it's something. The letter arrived 8 weeks after the basketball game. Sullivan v. Sullivan. Notice of intent to file for grandparents' rights. Evelyn's attorney threatened legal action for court-mandated visitation, supervised access, holiday schedules, the whole apparatus of family law weaponized against boundaries. I called a family law attorney that afternoon. She was direct. Grandparents' rights claims rarely succeed without prior established custody relationships, but they can drag on for months and cost thousands in legal fees. So that was the game. Not winning. Just punishing me for protecting my kids. I spent 3 nights researching case law anyway, needing to understand every angle, every precedent, every possible outcome. At work, I could spot budget discrepancies in minutes, but at 2 a.m., I was highlighting statutes about parental rights like my life depended on perfect comprehension. My lawyer responded with documentation, the social media posts, the unauthorized texts to minors, the school security report from the basketball game, everything I'd been collecting for exactly this moment. Then 2 weeks of silence. Each day stretched my nerves thinner, waiting for the next move, the formal filing, the court dates, the process that would force my children to explain to a judge why they didn't want to see their grandmother. But the notice never came. Just a brief message from Evelyn's attorney. They would not be filing formal paperwork. She'd lost. Or her attorney had looked at the evidence and refused to proceed. Either way, the legal threat evaporated. So she shifted tactics. Blake's phone started ringing daily, his mother crying about being abandoned by her only son. How I was controlling him, destroying their family. How I'd always been cold and distant, and now I was poisoning everyone against her. Maybe we're overreacting, Blake said one night. We were in the kitchen, not arguing, just existing in the same space while fighting different wars. Mom's clearly struggling, maybe family therapy. All of us together, including her, with a professional mediating. You want me to sit in therapy with a woman who called our daughter ordinary? I want to help my mother. By giving her access to hurt our kids with a therapist watching? The argument lasted an hour. Blake kept circling back. His mother needed help and cutting her off wasn't helping. I kept stating the same fact. Our children's protection mattered more than his mother's feelings. He moved to Aubrey's house the next day. I felt myself losing the ground I'd fought for. My husband gone. My mother-in-law winning by making me the villain who destroyed a family. The isolation pressing in. 3 weeks of separation. 3 weeks where Blake called to check on the kids but not on me. 3 weeks of Emma asking when Dad was coming home and me having no answer that didn't make me sound like the unreasonable one. Then I made a calculated decision. I invited Aubrey, 2 cousins, and an uncle to my home. Didn't explain why. Just said I needed to show them something and asked them to come Thursday at 7. They arrived confused, cautious, Aubrey's face already showing the defensive preparation she'd perfected over years of protecting her mother. I'd set up the dining room table like a project presentation. Bank statements arranged chronologically. Phone records printed and highlighted. The basketball game footage queued on my laptop. I'm going to show you evidence, I said. No editorializing, no emotion, just facts. Then I'm going to ask what you would do if this was happening to your children. The fraudulent roof repair billing. $7,800 for $800 of work. Then the fence repair. The furnace emergency. Each one with contractor receipts showing actual costs versus what Evelyn had billed me. Aubrey went pale looking at the financial records. Her hand covered her mouth. She borrowed money from us, too, one cousin said quietly. For her car? Insurance. Said it was an emergency, but I saw her driving months later and asked about the new insurance. She got defensive and changed the subject. The uncle leaned forward, studying the statements. Mom told me you refused to help with family costs, that you had money but wouldn't contribute. He looked up. These statements show you funded most events. I showed them the text messages Evelyn had sent directly to Emma and Gabriel. 43 messages over 2 weeks. Your mother's having a breakdown. Come see me without permission. I love you. The sister-in-law's breathing changed. Quick and shallow. Then the basketball game footage. Security escorting Evelyn out while she screamed Gabriel's name. Her unsteady walk, her slurred words, the timestamp showing 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. What would you do, I asked, if someone was doing this to your children? No one answered immediately. Aubrey took photos of everything. The bank statements, the text messages, the contractor receipts. Her hands shook slightly, but she was methodical, thorough. She left without saying much. The others followed. I watched them walk to their cars and wondered if I'd just made everything worse. 3 days of silence. Then Aubrey called. I'm sorry. Her voice was thick. I'm sorry for not seeing what was happening, for dismissing your concerns, for letting my children receive lavish gifts while yours were humiliated. I said nothing. Let her continue. I confronted Mom. Aubrey's breath caught. She was defensive, rageful, and drunk. At 2 p.m. I've been avoiding acknowledging how bad her drinking has gotten. How much worse it's been this past year. Aubrey, I want you at Riley's birthday party in a few weeks, not as an obligation, as genuine reconciliation. I want to start over. 2 days later, Aubrey went to Blake, showed him everything I'd shown her. He came home that night, walked through the door around 8. Emma and Gabriel were upstairs doing homework. I saw the evidence, he said. He didn't apologize immediately, didn't say I was right, just stood in our kitchen processing. Over the next several days, I watched him go through old memories with new clarity, recognizing patterns he'd spent his childhood learning to excuse, his mother's afternoon wine, her sudden emergencies that required money, the way she talked about him versus his sister when they were young. I need to talk to her, he said finally, directly, about all of it. Blake, let me handle it alone, please. He recorded the conversation. Told me afterward he needed evidence. Needed to hear her words in her own voice, so he couldn't later convince himself he'd misunderstood. He played it for me that night. Blake's voice. Why did you give Aubrey's kids expensive gifts and mine cheap ones? Evelyn's response was immediate, practiced. Aubrey's children are easier to be around, more grateful, better behaved. And my kids? A pause on the recording. Then, your children remind me of difficult traits I saw in myself as a child. Traits my own mother criticized, withdrawn, unappreciative. Why waste money on expensive gifts they wouldn't value anyway? There it was. Not ignorance, not oversight. The wound she'd received being passed down with perfect precision. Her own mother had called her withdrawn and unappreciative. So she saw those same traits in my children and responded with the same cruelty. She was inflicting a wound while genuinely believing it was accurate assessment. Blake's voice on the recording. What about the money? The roof repair? I took money for emergencies that were exaggerated because you always said yes. I grew to expect it. And I see nothing wrong with family helping family even if the need isn't urgent. Her narcissism was evident in every sentence. She believed her reasoning was sound. Became defensive when Blake pushed back. Insisted everyone was overreacting to reasonable decisions. Blake was shaken hearing his mother's casual cruelty and complete lack of self-awareness in her own words. 2 weeks later, Evelyn showed up uninvited at Riley's birthday party. She'd learned about it from a great-aunt Aubrey had invited before their confrontation. The family gossip chain working exactly as designed. I was present. Aubrey had invited me as the gesture of reconciliation we'd discussed. Emma was there too. Gabriel had basketball practice. Evelyn arrived at 3:15, showing clear signs of intoxication. Her hair disheveled, her movements unsteady in a way that had nothing to do with age. She walked straight toward me across Aubrey's backyard. Pointed. "You destroyed this family. You turned everyone against me with lies." 12 family members watched. "Mom, you need to leave," Aubrey said. Her voice shook but held firm. "You're a traitor." Evelyn turned on her daughter. "Believing her over your own mother. You need to address your drinking problem before you're welcome at family events." "I don't have a drinking problem." The word slurred slightly, proving the point. "Someone called the police. I didn't see who." Evelyn refused to leave until the officers arrived. Made it their problem. Made it a spectacle. After that incident, 3 family members reached out privately to apologize. They'd believed Evelyn's version of events, thought I was the difficult daughter-in-law. The evidence had shown them otherwise. Blake told his mother he would not have regular contact until she got professional help for both her behavior and her drinking. She hung up on him. That night, I gathered documentation of every financial transaction with Evelyn, every fraudulent emergency, every fabricated crisis, organized it chronologically, built a case for repayment. I wasn't expecting to collect, but having the evidence documented felt necessary. Like closing a file. Like finishing what I started by finally looking at the numbers. And I started formalizing the workplace mentorship program. Not informal coffee meetings anymore. A structured resource for people dealing with narcissistic family members. Boundary-setting frameworks. Evidence documentation templates. Pattern recognition guides. Everything I'd learned by failing to protect my children could help someone else's kids survive intact. Help someone else see clearly before 15 years had passed. Before $35,000 had been spent funding their own humiliation. Maya helped me outline the curriculum. The junior employee I'd been mentoring who'd recognized her own mother's manipulation through my lens. "You're good at this," she said, "seeing clearly for others. Maybe it's time to see clearly for yourself, too." I'd spent my career maintaining meticulous records of project expenditures while deliberately avoiding family finances, helping others navigate difficult relationships while forcing my own children to endure abuse. The pattern was clear now, painful, undeniable. Some wounds pass through 3 generations before someone finally says enough. This was me saying enough. Not perfectly, not without damage, but definitively. I wanted protection. They wanted access. That's an important distinction, one I should have recognized years ago.